The topic of this video will be the commandments of God. What are His commandments? So, first of all, there is the rule that is like the basis for all the commandment, kind of like the guideline that is based on it. It should be, and all the commandments are kind of they are based on that, which is called sometimes the golden rule. It's like God said that do to others as you would have them do unto you is this is what all the law and the prophets are standing on. So it's like that's the most basic and what you need to have on your mind. The most is this rule of the don't do what you don't want to be done to you, and just and do what you would want to be done to you. That is the most basic rule. Uh, both in well, okay, so that's the most important rule. Okay, so the second most important, or well, I maybe could say this is the second most important. It's hard to say what's the most important, but this and the other things are also, let's say, three most important things is the commandments that are called the two most important commandments. I made some two videos that in them I talk about these two most important commandments and I give like verses and explanations and stuff. So you if you want to go, you should go look there because it's like I can't make everything in one video. It's this subject is a really big subject. So I'm gonna refer you to some extent to and even there I refer a bit to some other stuff because it's really you can talk. It's not something you finish in a few minutes. The subject of the commandments of God. So okay, so the two most important commandments are the next thing that you need to think about, and they are like I talk about them in those other videos. Um, and now there is the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments also very important. You can get that both by how they were given and also that Yeshua he keep on saying them in all kind of other in all kind of contexts. He keep on bringing up commandments from the Ten Commandments. So you see, he wants you to obey the Ten Commandments and not just obey them, but also to understand the logic of each one of them and to expand it beyond the basic commandment, like he said, not just not to murder, but like to also not, you know, uh, get very angry and say very insulting things, you know. Um, and then, so I would name the 10 most important commandments. The first one is you shall have no other gods. I would say not before me, which is what it's written here, but al panai is like it's like over my face is like instead of me is a better translation. It's like you have no god, other gods that are like a replacement of the true God. Um, okay, the second one is yes, you shall not make idols. Uh, you shall not take the name of Yahweh your God in vain. Uh, remember you keeping the Shabbat, in other words, is the fourth one. Keeping it doesn't, I don't think it matters if you think about it as Saturday or Sunday, as long as it's accepted where you live, that this is the day that is the seventh day. Um, if you can keep off Saturday and Sunday, I think it's better. honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. I would add to this also don't like, in general say bad stuff um, about people falsely, uh, not just in court. Uh, you shall not covet. Okay, so those are the Ten Commandments. Now, next thing I have in the list is the Sermon on the Mount. The Mount. In the Sermon on the Mount, he says some other things that can be considered commandments also. And I made a series of four videos about the Sermon on the Mount. So if you there, you can find more information about what the commandments basically that he gave in the Sermon on the Mount. And uh, uh, there is another, there is some stuff that he say that are not in Sermon on the Mount and are not the commandments that he say in the Gospels that he says that you must not divorce unless it's really like either he says only for sexual immorality. I think it can be understood that if you make exception for that, he also would make exception for some really extreme stuff, other really extreme stuff, but really shouldn't divorce unless it's absolutely necessary, let's say. Another commandment. Mm, and then like you can look up more if you want, but this is what I can think of because something that can be called commandments that are given in the gospel. There's other stuff that are written that he says do this and that, but it sounds a bit more like advice or heads up kind of you should know this and that rather than a real commandment like you would have no other gods but me or things like that. Um, so I'll stick to things that are really like clearly commandments kind of. Okay, so now beyond this, there is the commandments that are given in the Old Testament by Moses that are most of them are irrelevant or even impossible to keep at this point, but not all of them. So I made a list of the ones that are still relevant. And that you shouldn't think of them like just what the commandment says, because the point is not like literally the commandment, but like the meaning of it, like try to expand beyond the basic. Like it's written, for example, don't kidnap. It doesn't mean just, of course, you won't kidnap, but also don't like force. You shouldn't force people to do things they don't want to, uh, just because you want them to. You get it? It's like this kind of thinking. Like each one of them. I'm not gonna do all this logic for all of them because there's a lot, but you can do yourself. Like each one of them, think about it. What it means. Kind of. Okay, so the list is like this. First, idolatry, like worshiping other gods, is prohibited. Enticement to idolatry, false prophecy or prophesying in the name of other gods, blasphemy, uh, or cursing God's name, Sabbath desecration, child sacrifice, striking a parent, striking a parent, cursing a parent, uh, rebellious, rebellious, uh, rebellious behavior by a child to a parent, adultery. Um, well, some of this is, of course, already mentioned in the other stuff I said, but I'll continue. Rape, yeah, rape, consensual. sex with betrothed virgin, and as I would say not also with not a virgin, also like in general, someone betrothed, uh, like it's the same as engaged, I think it's the same thing. Homosexual sex, bestiality, I think it's like sex with animals, incest, with kind of there is not one, but there is some all kind of laws about incest and stuff like this, like don't marry or have sex like with all kind of people they have some kind of family relation to. Uh, witchcraft, being spiritist, necromancy, medium, all kind of stuff like this. False witness, mm, murder, some more incest laws, uh, prostitution, adultery, rape, I already mentioned, kidnapping, oh, it is repeating itself, negligent homicide in some cases, uh, negligent, I would say negligent also wounding or negligent like mm, certain homicide, but you should probably not only think about it in terms of homicide. And other forms of incitement to apostasy or collective idolatry. And then I'm gonna go to the Deuteronomy 24 because there was something more there. Uh, and it says in Deuteronomy 24, if a man marries a woman who becomes displeasing to him because he finds something indecent about her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce, gives it to her, and sends her from his house, and if after she leaves his house and she becomes the wife of another man, and her second husband dislikes her and writes her a certificate of divorce, gives it to her and sends her from his house, or if he dies, then her first husband who divorced her is not allowed to marry her again after she has been defiled. That would be detestable in the eyes of Yahweh. Do not bring sin upon the land your God, Yahweh your God, is giving you as inheritance. In other words, if someone don't make a game out of divorce and marriage, like you can't like divorce someone and then like because it didn't go well, like go be with someone else, then this didn't go well, then divorce, then the new one, or if they died or something, then like you know get out of that relationship and go back to the previous relationship, so that there is also like don't do too much like relationship changes as if it's a game. So there is that. And later, I wouldn't want to read the whole chapter, but there is later something that he says also that if someone marries, then he like must not be required to go to war or to put upon him some kind of burden like this if he just got married. And and there's, I suppose there is some other stuff like hiding in all the Old Testament. There is some other. probably. Ah, yeah, there was one more that I remember that was written somewhere, several places not to castrate both men and animals. So also don't castrate animals. And I don't know why it's not wasn't written in the list I just read, but there was some other place written also that if someone has an animal that is dangerous, then it's their responsibility. Like if someone has some bull, for example, that gores someone, then he must like isolate it or kill it. And if it happens again, then he's like to supposed to be put to death or something like that. So it's like according to the Old Testament law. So it's like basically saying like if you own animals, you are responsible for what they do, and you need to put humans above them in like the you know uh, they're just animals. Don't treat them like your children or something. If they're dangerous to people, then either they need to be isolated or get rid of like because people are more important. And and what probably you can find some other stuff in the Old Testament if you look enough. Well, this is like the main commandments of God. Like if there is something else, it must be not really there. I went over this kind of stuff in several ways and didn't find something else that much. So those are basically like the commandments of God, shortly put. Although it's kind of short because I referred it to other places, but still. Uh, yeah, so but each law like this needs some thinking by itself beyond just reading. Like I just read now this stuff, but it's not like really, I just said like the Sermon on the Mount, of course, on the Mount, like of course it's like you need to go deeper than that to really follow it properly. And, but this is like I wanted to summarize like the what are the commandments. And there's one more thing that I now remember because it's Christmas. Today's Christmas is like, for example, I didn't go to work today, even though I live in a country that people do work in that day because it is mentioned in the Old Testament that you must not work, and there was even death penalty for who violated it. Uh, at least there in what is written. Uh, Not that anyone should try to implement it or anything, but like the uh, for like working on a holiday. So it's like yeah, there is also a rule saying like you shouldn't work. It's like the holidays that God care about. And those holidays change since those times. But I would say nowadays they are like depending where you live, it might be different. But if it's like let's say something like Christmas or like Easter, Pascha, whatever you want to call it, and some stuff like this, then working on that day is also like against God's commandment. So yeah.